Hey, welcome back. My name is Deborah Peters, and welcome to the Deborah Peters Show. This show is all about consciousness, the consciousness of who you are being with yourself. How self-aware are you? How tuned in are you to your thoughts? How much do you acknowledge your feelings? How connected are you to your body? How present are you in your relationships? And how strong are your intentions in your business? And what about your self-expression? Are you true to you? Or do you say what other people want to hear from you just to fit in? So this is all about consciousness. It's all about raising the bar on your self-awareness. And this is the show that focuses on the leading edge of thought. And we want to take you there. And today's guest is Tina Fumo. She's a Canadian grandmother. This is part 2 of this conversation. The first episode we did together was to profile her book. I found her online and I was moved to tears by the experience that she's had in her life in saving her granddaughter from the system. She's written a book called Fancy Prison, and it doesn't mince any words about what really goes on within the system. It is time, ladies and gentlemen, mothers and fathers, grandparents, aunts and uncles, and the entire village to get our voice heard, to stand up and not just save and protect our children, but to inoculate against the abuse, the violence, the theft, the trafficking, the torture, and the complete use of children as some kind of sick tool to feed people's egos and dark side. And so, Tina, thank you for being here today. I just so appreciate just who you're being on this planet right now.
Well, I appreciate that intro, Deborah. Way to go. We are not going to mince words in this, are we?
No, we're not. And we're going to dig into the root cause of why, first of all, people pretend it's not happening. Secondly, ignore that it's happening. And thirdly, turn a blind eye to actually being a voice and standing up and defending our children. They don't have to be your blood relative to defend them. It could be the neighbor's kid down the block. It could be the child you're driving past on your way home from work. It could be any child. It could be the child in the mall. It's time.
Yeah, I agree. One child is all children. And like you said in your intro, it takes a village. So we seem to have gotten away from that. And especially in North America, we're all into, independent households and how much money you're making. And, my kids are doing better than your kids. This isn't a competition. We are all part of one universe. And we are all human beings with inherent rights and dignities as human beings. We're born with that. So somewhere along the line, I know in our story, there was no humanity. I mean, what kind of cruelty does it take to, so I guess I should back up just a little bit in a nutshell. What happened was in 2017, my daughter gave birth to a baby girl. She was living in a small town in British Columbia, which is the neighboring province to where I am.
Sure.
I'm in Alberta.
You're in Alberta, yeah.
And she wasn't really doing that great in that town. Their housing was a problem. There weren't any jobs. And my daughter, just the way she was, she always had troubles with transitioning from point A to point B. She was usually,
a lot of us do. Yeah.
Yeah, she was usually fine when she got there. But, as her mother, I know that she kind of just needed a gentle nudge to go, look, now's the time for a fresh start. You have this little human being now you're responsible for. Let mom help out. So I dropped my life and went out there, and what happened, I was blindsided by.
Okay, I want to interrupt you because I think there's something really critical that needs to be said here. Mm-hmm. And just like to back up for just a second, we're all a child of God. No matter where you're from, what you look like, what you drive, how tall or short you are, we're all cut from that We all come from that source. So with that said, we're all equal. And so I think the missing piece to this story that needs to be said is the way the system works in Canada. And that is when you get the diagnosis that you're pregnant, you become there's a flag on your name. So when you walk into any birthing center, a report goes that you've given birth to that child or you're about to. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, and the whole process of applying for a birth certificate, which is that first government issue of who the child is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but what about this flag? Is this just for certain cultures, races, single mothers? Like, who gets flagged and who doesn't?
Well, in our last conversation, we talked a lot about birth alerts. So I think that was the first time you'd ever heard of it. It was certainly my first time experiencing it. So I think birth alerts are kind of this pseudo red flag in the system. And in the 5 years since this has happened to me, I've yet to hear of this happening where a child gets taken away from wealthy people. Because the minute people can lawyer up, social workers tend to back off.
They drop the case, yeah.
So they are intentionally targeting poor, which is often Indigenous people here in Canada, but not always, but poor, marginalized families who maybe don't know, what their rights are, how to fight for the rights.
That's predatory.
It is very predatory, yeah. And in most cases that I've heard, parents, even if they're going through problems, which people do, we're humans.
Sure, we're human beings.
And parenting is a skill. You learn it from day one, and then day two.
And there's no manual.
Exactly. So, but what parents get judged on more than anything is their ability to navigate the system, not necessarily on
how vulnerable are they to the system.
Which is ridiculous, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So I know that I thought more than a few times during our ordeal that, geez, I wish I was a lawyer. But you shouldn't have to be a lawyer to fight to get back your own child. Yeah.
No, I mean, we're talking about the child welfare system.
Mm-hmm.
And by the very terminology, welfare means they're supposed to be on the side of the family of the child. Mm-hmm. And yet they're literally stealing babies from healthy, emotionally and fiscally healthy families.
Mm-hmm. And normal families that are having normal emotions. I mean, one example that I can use, one example I can use here is that they'll go and use, this birth alert, the pseudo red flag. So they'll go in, the hospital notifies CPS or MCFD or whoever the ministry is in that province. And they will go and red flag it and then take the mother's baby, like right after birth, 1 or 2 days right after birth. And then they turn around and judge the mother. Oh, she's unstable because she's freaking out. Of course she's freaking out.
Hello.
And
there isn't a more vulnerable time in a woman's life than, right after birth.
Yeah. And, and then getting back to that level of cruelty that it takes to do that, like, because I don't know too many people who can do that. Like, you take a baby from their parent and you justify it. But it had to have been there because I witnessed it. I witnessed it when I begged to these social workers, do not do this. Do not take my grandbaby. You're making a mistake. And they had these inhuman, cold, callous looks on their faces. They were not hearing me. They did not believe me. And then in the end, we won, but they did not make it easy. They kept
unbelievable.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Yeah.
So I'm trying to imagine getting up out of bed each day and dressing for my work day to see whose baby I can steal.
Mm.
Like, I can't get my head around that. I mean,
yeah, it's very systematic, and I don't think they put any thought into it. So that's what's missing.
How do
is
you
they don't,
not? You're a human being. How do
yeah,
you not
but they don't.
question?
They don't. They justify their salary. So they'll, I suspect every routine every week is like, okay, so Friday afternoon, and it always seems to be Friday afternoon because then the parents are impotent to do anything during the weekend. It's like, okay, what baby, what child are we focusing on this week? And it's just, they want their paychecks. That's what their job is. And it's very routine. It's very systematic. Yeah.
Or they have to be soulless. Listen, we've got a comment. A gal by the name of Cheryl in Winnipeg. I'm dealing with a birth alert as we speak right now.
Yeah, I met Cheryl at a conference a couple of weeks ago here in Edmonton. She flew out from Winnipeg and she was at this conference. So yeah, I don't know what this specific birth alert is that she's
So
talking about.
here she gave us a little more information. CFS is serving mom with more papers. Mom will miss baby's first Christmas and birthday. The mother was 40 years old. The baby's now 8 months. 8 months they've had custody of this child illegally. Apprehended because mom had seizure after labor. No drugs in her system.
The
What a
seizure could have
sham.
been, well, the seizure could have been anything. Maybe
Of
loss
course.
of blood.
People have seizures all the time after major physical, endurance situations, whether it's a health-induced thing or sports or whatever. It happens. Our systems go wonky. So this is interesting. Let's come back to this because I don't want to miss out on the things we need to get through today. There is one more comment, and this is coming from Lynn. The mother is causing emotional injury to her child of 48 years old. Yeah, that's kind of crazy, isn't it, that they would take that stance?
No, the way I'm reading that is that mother she's being sarcastic.
I know.
Mother is causing injury to a 48-year-old baby. Yeah, 48-hour-old baby. Okay, is the baby telling you this? Like you know this because
yeah. It all So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. I think that I'd like to give you just a couple more minutes to just kind of finish the tail end of your story. So your daughter gives birth. You get a heads up to come help her, that the authorities are looking to take this child. How long did y'all have custody before they snatched up the baby?
She was taken at 2 weeks old. They would have done it at birth, but we were lucky because we had a friend who turned out to be our biggest advocate, Suzanne. And Suzanne's trained as a doula, and my daughter had wanted her there for the delivery of the baby. But little did we know that Suzanne's expertise in delivering babies was what we didn't really need. What we needed was an advocate dealing with MCFD after the baby was born. Yeah.
But how are you going to know? Like,
no.
Who expects the authorities to show up and just want to steal your baby? And I'm using these words on purpose because that's essentially what they're doing.
Yeah, I was absolutely blindsided. And from a legal point of view too, I mean, I had done nothing wrong. I had just become a grandmother. I'm an educated person. I went to University in Toronto. I don't do drugs, no alcohol. I don't even smoke. And after the baby was born, they were already building a case against my daughter with the birth alert and everything. But then they were trying to dismiss me and look for something on me. I haven't done anything wrong. Why am I being investigated?
Because they have to defend their position.
I understand that. But as Canadians, I'm going to say this again. This is really important for people to understand, because if they can do this with a law-abiding person who's done nothing wrong, they can do it to anybody.
That's right.
And the only factor that differentiates me from, say, Bill Gates or whoever is money. We were poor. They figured they'd get away with it. They figured we wouldn't lawyer up or we wouldn't know how to fight them. they were wrong on all those accounts, except for the
Yeah.
poor part. But I mean, you don't need money to fight for and love your child. You just don't, you know.
I think that's an important case to make here, because for all the people that are watching that might be saying, well, that's fine for you, Tina, you had the resources. That isn't necessarily the answer that anyone, and I think this is a really good segue into what's going on in Canadian culture. And we can unpack that a little bit, is that you don't have to have money to win what's rightfully yours. It's just a matter of fortitude. It's a matter of commitment. It's a matter of confidence in yourself. It's a matter of standing up for what you believe in, fighting for what's right, not caving into the system because you give that system more value than you give your own belief system. I mean, there's a lot there.
There is, yeah. And you shouldn't have to have money in order to raise a child. I mean, anybody who's traveled around the world and gone to poor countries that, you know, by our standards have very little, but they have beautiful children. I mean, these children are just sun-kissed with beautiful skin and great big white smiles on their faces. It doesn't take a genius to see that, you know, maybe they're poor, but look at what they have. They're happy. The children are well loved and well taken care of. So what are we doing wrong here in Canada that this system is allowed to perpetuate? It's ridiculous.
Well, okay. So from my perspective, I ditched Canada a long time ago for this very reason. I just did not have any patience for the apathy. You know, there's been a slow boil, let's say, in the programming of the masses, the brainwashing of the masses in Canada over decades, to not question authority, to put people in self-imposed, purchased positions of authority on pedestals, and to give away our sovereignty to them to make decisions for us, to never question the status quo, not be too loud, not be too aggressive, not be too anything. I mean, I'm sorry that if this offends some Canadians, but y'all got to just like get your act together and find, like, dig deep inside and find what you're really made of, and stop looking for a socialist communist dictatorship to determine how you're supposed to think, live, eat, how your health is supposed to work. I mean, everybody talks about the Canadian healthcare system like it's some kind of god. And what they don't realize is that if you're over 60, I think the age is 60 in Canada, and you have a life-threatening disease, you're put on the back burner for anyone that is younger and can be a more productive member of society. You may never get that surgery or that transplant because they just park you to die. They don't care. And so you have to really look at the bigger picture here, right? And the bigger picture here is the consciousness. Now, the consciousness is born out of a dictatorship. The crown, if you will, the British crown, never let go of Canada. Canada never stood on its own 2 feet. America did. That's what the Bill of Rights and the Constitution is about. These guys, these founders of America laid their lives on the line to sign the Bill of Rights and to write the Constitution. That was treason against the King of England. And Canada never broke away. They never stopped sucking on the pacifier. No. And so that made way for countless leaders of the country to continue to brainwash the minds of the Canadian population to the point where Canadians apologize for being wrong. Like, a Canadian will be in a bar and bump into someone and apologize, or someone bumps into them and they apologize. It's just this default of apologetic mindset. You can't take people that are apologizing for living on the planet and expect them to stand up to a system that is clearly corrupt. And there has to be, and we still see this today in the mandates, the border mandates, the way the whole pandemic was handled in Canada, and the elongated lie that has gone on and would still be going on if Pierre Poilievre had not won the leadership of the Conservative Party, because he put the fear into certain people that I'm not going to give any airtime to. And suddenly that mandate was dropped. So, I mean, it's not rocket science to figure this stuff out. The thing is that there has to be a shift in consciousness. Canadians need to learn to ask for what they want unapologetically. And until that happens, this kind of stuff will continue to go on.
Yes, I'm going to. That's a lot to unpack there, and I'm not going to name any politicians because they already.
Of course, I just had to throw that in there, Tina.
They already get enough of our airtime, so
they do.
But I heard there was a speaker at this conference where I met Cheryl a couple of weeks ago. There was a speaker there, Sherry Strong, and she said something that's really stuck with me about apologies. And I say this much in Fancy Prison, how after everything we went through, after, it almost bankrupted me emotionally and financially to fight to get back a baby who already belonged to us. After everything that we went through, I don't want an apology from the Canadian government. And this speaker, Sherry Strong, said, why would you give your power away? So I do not consent. I don't want an apology from the Canadian government. It doesn't mean anything anyway. And your apology to me means nothing because I never consented to you to,
exactly.
Take this child away from us in the first place. So yeah, I'm hearing you on this apology. So yeah, we need to be a little more conscious. That's the name of your show, about not apologizing for everything. So I'm not apologizing for that. And people don't like my book. I don't care. Until you go through what we went through, then just keep an open mind and don't judge. And at the end of Fancy Prison, after you read it, ask yourself, what would you do if this was your child? Like, really, what would you do? Would you have been able to hold it together like my daughter and I were able to? It wasn't easy, but we did it. And I thank God, because we had some lucky breaks along the way, like a lot of lucky breaks. But I ask you, would you be able to keep it together and not like, these people? Because it was so frustrating.
I'm sure it was, and probably expensive and tested your last nerve.
Yeah.
The thing is that clearly you're made of something more than what the system is made of, because no matter what happened, no matter how much it seemed like the odds were stacked against you, you kept the commitment to your outcome. And that was having your grandbaby back. And what's interesting is in everything I teach, in every seminar I've ever taught, it's all about staying committed to your outcome and ignoring everything in between, no matter what's not working, no matter what's going sideways. I've always believed when you are committed to a plan A, you don't need a plan B. Why would you need a plan B when you have 100% buy-in on your outcome of plan A? Yeah. And it sounds to me that's what you did.
I have never been more focused in my life as I was in 2017 when it was like nothing else mattered. We were so focused on figuring out what their strategy was, staying one or two steps ahead of them. And we were consumed every single minute of the day. Okay, what do we have to do next? What's going right? What do they need? What anticipate any problem? Like, I have never been more focused in my life as I was in 2017. And I feel like everything that I had gone through, every challenge I had faced in life had prepared me for that
Sure.
role as a grandmother. Yeah, if that makes any sense at all.
It totally does. I mean, what you're doing, Tina, and first of all, standing up and getting your grandchild back and taking on a system that has infinite resources, and then writing a book about it. And by the way, everybody watching needs to order Fancy Prison. It's on Amazon. And then continuing to speak out and have these conversations where most people would just go hunker down at home and hide and not say anything because they didn't want to rock the boat. And therein lies the issue. The boat needs to be rocked.
Yeah, it needs to be rocked. We need to have some uncomfortable conversations because we don't have a choice. What's at stake is children. And again, I'm referring to this conference, but we talked a lot at this conference about how many children are dying in foster care, and there's no accountability. Nobody's being held accountable for the death of all these children in foster care. I mean,
It's not a thing of the past. It's an ongoing issue. And you know, it's not just the death, it's the abuse, it's the torture, it's the them just being used, you know, and discarded. It's a heartless, I mean, it's evil. It's evil. There's nothing more precious and innocent in this world than a baby.
No.
And a little child that is still developing mentally and emotionally. And I mean, they don't even know who they are yet. You know, they're trying to figure out life, and everything that goes on around them is making an impression and an imprint on their psychology. And then, you know, to add to the mix where they're just not even considered valuable is just egregious.
And how it's considered to be a solution. Like how on this what moral compass allows us to accept that taking a child away from their family is a solution? I mean, and people will say, oh, well, they must have their reasons. There is just such a very small, infinite amount or finite amount of children who are seriously in dangerous situations and who need to be taken away from their parents. But that percentage is so small compared to the numbers of children who are being warehoused in the foster care system. So why?
What a word. Warehouse.
So why is it that the general public is only getting this information about that finite number of children who do need protection, who do need to be placed in somewhere other than their home, but they're just generalizing it for everybody who comes into contact with?
Well, again, it comes down to that slow boil. You know, you put a frog in a pot of cold water and you turn up the heat, and by the time the frog figures out, I mean, what's going on?
Yeah,
it's like kind of too late.
It's funny you should say that. That's an analogy I used. I wrote a paper right after our deal, and whereas I was more polished when I wrote Fancy Prison, I wasn't very polished. It's called The Frog in the Frying Pan, and yeah, I used that analogy.
That's really good. I love it. You know, I will say this, and this is an observation that I've had for years. I think that there's kind of a mindset that, and this is all of humanity, you know, this is a generalization. It's not true for every single person, but I'm trying to make a point, right? there's a mindset that if there's something going on in the world, if we ignore it, then we won't become it. That's kind of a human trait. And it sort of reminds me when my nephew was really little, he would hide his head behind a sofa or a chair or under a blanket. And, the rest of his little body was sticking out, but he didn't realize you couldn't see him. He thought if he couldn't see you, then you couldn't see him. And that's what this makes me think of is that, well, okay, I'm a parent, I have children. If I don't look at this over here, then it won't affect my life. But that's an old consciousness. That's very archaic thinking in terms of we're separate, right? It's a thinking that we're separate from each other. And the truth is we are all one. So let me finish. So when that little child is getting abused and neglected and tortured, that has an energetic impact on your children. That has an effect. That energy is everywhere. You can't pee in the pool and not have it everywhere in the water. It just isn't possible. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and that's a dangerous notion too, to remain apathetic, right? Because of that, again, that frog in the frying pan. Little by little, you don't realize how things are being insinuated into your life.
Brainwash.
You're losing your power. Brainwash, exactly. So it's very dangerous not to be a little more aware and to have that attitude where, oh, well, it'll never happen to me. And quite frankly, we get bombarded. Like, I don't think I've ever more in my life turned off the television as I have in the past couple of years, because if it hasn't been for COVID and all the deaths running across the bottom of the screen like ticker tape, and I don't mean to diminish at all anybody who died of COVID. It is a serious disease, but at some point it got politicized, because I do question some of, well, is this science or is this trying to control the masses? Like, and they're not very
it's 100% control. It's all, for all the viewers, go back into my YouTube channel. I did 2 videos on the science of propaganda. And I basically unpacked and dismantled how repetitious messaging in the media using sounds, colors, certain words, markers, shapes, etc., can take an entire planet to its knees in fear, where it's immobilized. And when that can happen, this is a piece of cake, what you're talking about, because it's a segment of society that literally has no voice. Literally has no voice. I caught this video the other day online. I think it was a reel somewhere, and it was a daycare. The kids looked like they were maybe 3. These beautiful, shining, innocent little thirsty faces of love, and they're all sitting around this little table in their daycare in their little tiny chairs. And in comes one of the workers with a Jason face mask on. Jason from the horror movies.
Oh,
yeah. And walks around the table and taps each kid on the shoulder. And each child immediately has a meltdown, and they think it's funny. I mean, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? Seriously, people. And we have had decades of desensitization. I'm hard pressed in the evening, if I want to watch a movie, to find something that's actually heartwarming. Everything is full of violence, and it's graphic, and it's explicit, and it makes sure that it's in your face. And if you don't think that that's programming your nervous system to be desensitized against anything else in society that's going on, then you are seriously asleep at the wheel. And it is seriously time to wake up.
Yeah.
I mean, no, it's unconscionable.
Mhm.
So this is a wake-up call for all of us. And it starts with questioning the status quo.
Mhm.
You know, being willing to be that person in the room that says, excuse me, but can you, why is this happening? Why are you allowing this to happen?
Mhm.
What's
Mhm.
what's the agenda behind, who's making money? We haven't even talked about that. Who's
Yeah.
making money off of this? It's not a rhetorical question. Who do you think's making money off of this, Tina?
Oh, it's not a rhetorical question. Well, it certainly isn't the families, because there's no money put for prevention, even
Somebody's
though
making money off of it. Otherwise, there'd be no need for a birth alert. That is, to me, that is a license for child trafficking.
it is. Yeah, it is. And it's when you're in it, you realize how the odds are not in your favor. I mean, even today, before I jumped on the podcast with you, I was with Keeping Families Together, which is an advocacy group that I still remain involved in. And there's a lawyer on our panel who often contributes. And she was saying how in the last 20 years, like, she can pinpoint exact documentation that's just disappeared. And now so it used to be like pamphlets for parents to, when they go through this, they have something tangible they can read and maybe help them through it. Now it's all online. And she says, and I'm hard pressed to find it. It's in some sort of, on some menu under some vague file name that I would have never found it. And she's a lawyer. Like, she knows the system. And so, yeah, it's
So listen, I have a question for you.
mm-hmm.
What's the answer? Because here's the deal. God's calling. There is a calling. This has gone on long enough. And there is a distinct calling, because it's not just there, it's everywhere. I mean, the awareness around what's been happening to children is enormous.
Yeah. I mean,
and you can't pretend it doesn't exist.
No, I mean, I see Cheryl posting here. I know Cheryl's tries to help families, and Lynn too. I've been sharing with the advocacy groups that we need to garner more public support, because right now all of the work is falling on a few people who have experienced it, and it's taxing for us because
system's big.
Because we're still healing. Like, we were just devastated, and then we're healing from it. So for each and every person to approach it with less judgment, more open-mindedness, and compassion,
more curiosity, like, what's really going on here?
Because it doesn't take long, just a couple of Google searches, and then you follow along one case. Or if you hear about a neighbor that, oh, so-and-so said, just invite them out for a cup of coffee and listen. Oh my goodness, just listen. Don't judge. Don't, wait for your turn to chime in. Listen, because, and I say this in Fancy Prison, I honestly think their strategy is to do the most unbelievable things to parents. So that's exactly what happens. Nobody believes them. Like, nobody believes that this can actually happen in Canada, because we're projected across the globe to be this nice country with great manners, and that would never happen in Canada. Yeah, no, it's happening here in Canada. I met a lady from Africa a few months ago, and, well, actually more like a year ago. But anyway, she was. She'd immigrated from Africa. Lovely woman. Her English was fine. I asked her, where she learned. She learned in school. And so she always had, and she found out I lived in Banff. So that started the conversation, because Banff, of course, is known for the beautiful Rocky
Well, I'm coming to visit you to go skiing this winter.
So well, I don't live in Banff anymore.
Oh, shoot.
But anyway, so it was interesting, because she gave me her interpretation of what Canada was like before she had immigrated, while she was living in Africa. And when she came here, for example, the reality of the homelessness absolutely blindsided her because she just thought, oh, in a country like Canada, what, you can't have people living on the street when it's minus 30.
Right.
And that homelessness is, I mean, it's complicated. I'm not gonna even pretend to think I have the solutions, but I mean, if it's a gauge of our society, if we drive by homeless people and we're just like, oh, well, it's not my problem. It is your problem. Okay, this is our country. So if you want Canada to be this country that we're all pontificating around the world, it is, then yeah, we need to. And the thing is, that has to come from the leaders down, because they're all just blah, 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 lip service, blah, blah, blah.
See, I disagree on that part. I think it needs to come from the middle up. And I'll tell you why I think that. A few years ago, I was retained to put together a mission statement and a values proposition for a fairly large corporation. They had about 4,500 employees at the time, and couldn't get the CEO buy-in. He wanted nothing to do with it. And the president was hands off too, because he was distracted by all these other fires he needed to put out. So what I did, I mean, they'd already signed the contract, and so I have to deliver, right? Mm-hmm. So how am I going to make this thing work? I went to middle management and I said, I've been tasked to do this for this organization because you're kind of dysfunctional, no disrespect intended. And so I need to get this done, because I don't take on something and not complete it. I always make sure it's the best. And so I need your help. Well, they were more than happy to dig in. So I went with those guys and their employees, and we did it from the middle and the bottom up. And what ended up happening is, through osmosis, that value proposition and that mission statement took over the culture of that organization. So if you're looking to the leadership to let you in, I can promise you, when there's a boardroom and there's people around the table, nobody's going to, scooch over and pull in a seat for you, because that threatens their chair. Your voice threatens their validity. So you want to do this, you got to go organic. You got to go grassroots, and God is calling, because this has gone on for far too long and it's not hidden anymore. So that's the only way I think that this is going to happen. You can't do this alone, Tina. I mean, you have opened the floodgates. You're like the portal. You're like bringing this forward, and it looks like by the comments that we've gotten today that you have people that agree with you and that are on the same page and that are behind you. I think, if I may, that you need to put a calling out to the moms and the dads. This is what's been working in America against critical race theory, is having the moms and the dads show up at the school board meetings. So put a calling out to the moms and the dads. You know what? If each family could just come forward and be the voice of one little kid that's lost in the system, eventually you'd hit a tipping point.
Interesting. Actually, I think that idea has been we're zeroing in on that idea. Yeah, Canadian
Voices of Change.
Carolyn Angel.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah.
So, because when God calls us to do something, we can't ignore it. I mean, we can pretend, but it'll wreak havoc in our minds. Like, it will haunt us. And right?
You keep saying when God calls us. I'm hard pressed to to know exactly when God called me. I thanked God. Don't get me wrong. I thank God because I think we had a lot of lucky breaks along the way. And so I'm giving gratitude to the big guy. But this weekend, I I was just put onto this chapter in the Bible.
Yeah.
And it's in Ephesians, and it's chapter 5, verse 14. And this is what it said: Wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. So, yes, I think that, and this verse goes on, but I think what it is just shedding light on the darkness that is
Yeah.
going on right now. And it is a calling to me, you, the people who've joined in, like you said, all the moms and dads. It takes a village to raise a child. And I like, they are targeting poor, marginalized people, and that's why the system has been able to perpetuate for as long as it has. They're very skilled at gaslighting, but
Yes.
children are dying in foster care. They're being abused. They're being, they don't have a home. They're moving around like 20 times. Like, how is this Canada? This is not the country I remember growing up. We had family values. Like, we're, and that was first and foremost. We didn't have some government person coming in and telling us, how to live your life and how to raise your child,
I'll tell you what, I grew up on a farm. If somebody like that showed up, they'd get run off with a shotgun.
Yeah.
And that's why they want your weapons. But that's another conversation. Just had to slide that in there. So here's the way I see it. It's like this. It's a twofold. It's not an either or. It's an and. It's my favorite saying. So first of all, you got to go grassroots and you got to talk to the moms and the dads, and whatever that takes to get them to step up, you got to do it. And then at the same time, and this is for all Canadians, you got to start questioning ideology. You've got to start questioning the status quo. You have to start pushing back at societal rules. Question the rules. Question your doctor. Question anything that is a law that's put into place for your best interests. I mean, never, ever. What is that saying? I think it's like 9 words or something. Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Like, run. Okay, just run. So,
or to me, it's the best. Like, if I swear to God, if I hear that expression one more time with social workers, we're doing this in the best interest of the child. I'm going to
Lord have mercy.
cringe. I'm going to cringe if I ever hear that again, because I think it's more like in the best interest of your paycheck. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little more invested in what's in the best interest of my grandchild.
Well, and see, yes. And so this is something that I had to unlearn, and that was fear of questioning authority. I had to unlearn that because I was well brainwashed into anyone that has, a diploma on the wall is better than you and knows better for you than you can know for yourself. And I had to unlearn that. That was a deep program in me. The other thing I had to unlearn that is like a Canadian brainwashing is to explain everything. This is my situation. Let me explain my situation instead of just asking for what you want. It's like, you don't have to explain anything to anyone. Just know what you want and ask for it. And if you get a no, hang up and call back until you get a yes. It's pretty simple. But it's like, basically what I'm saying, Canadians, is grow some balls, okay? Like, it's time to step up and really take charge of your lives and stop looking outside of yourself at some kind of government entity or authority to fix your problems or to tell you how to live your life or to give you permission to permission. That's tied into the apology thing. Yeah.
I do not consent. I do not give you permission to interfere with my life. I got this.
Yeah. And when you're asked by an authority figure this question, do you understand? The answer should be no. No, I do not stand under you.
Oh.
No.
You're just a hotbed of challenges. No, I don't.
This conversation gets me really fired up. I don't know if you've noticed or not. Oh my God.
I'm just trying to read this comment here. The general population doesn't understand. If this is
if you question the consequences are dire. The loose visits with your children, you lose visits with your children, and you lose any involvement you have if you question authority. So therefore, in order to have a chance against children's services, you have to shut up and be a robot. Do what they say without questions asked. Well, if that's not communist, I don't know what is. I don't know what is. So maybe that's where Canada needs to start waking up, is to face the fact that you live in a communist society, and that's where you got to create the change. So I think we deduced it down to like a root cause.
Yeah, I have to admit it. I think in our case too, because I was so blindsided. I'd never been in the foster care system. I was a single mom. I raised my child as best as I could. So she was never in the foster care system. But this fear is real. What Lynn is explaining here. And I think in our case, like I wasn't afraid of the social workers. I was confused by what they were doing, but I wasn't really afraid of them because I knew what my own power was, and I knew what my own strength was. So again, a lot of this, what they're saying is people are stripped of their rights. They just feel unempowered. Disempowered, yeah. Mm-hmm. And when they lose that power and that sense of their human rights, like their inherent human rights, then yes, that makes them incredibly vulnerable. And the children suffer for sure. I mean, if their parents are doing this, what Lynn is explaining here, robotic, then imagine what's happening to their kids. If this is how their parents are having to capitulate,
Well, I mean, like I was saying earlier, like the whole thing is evil. Like there's nothing good in this. So let's not pretend there is.
No.
And I smell an agenda. So, I mean, follow the money. Just follow the money.
Yeah, well, the funding follows the children. So there's no money for prevention. So nothing happens until they take the child from the family and put the child in state care. Then magically they like, oh, we've got funding for this. Oh, of course you've got funding for everything. You've taken the child. You couldn't have, figured out the funding and maybe a better resource system before taking the child. No, everything was dependent on that. It's very transactional. It can't happen until the child is taken, and then the funding follows the child.
Hence the rush to take the child.
Yeah, that's the only thing that they're fast at, is taking the child, and then after that, everything is at a snail's pace.
My God.
And I'm not kidding you. It takes years for some parent. I know of parents that are still fighting after 3-4 years to get even visitations back with their children. I mean, how did this become?
What are they hiding? What are they hiding that you can't see the child? That would be my question. Why can't I see this child? What are you hiding?
Well, even a supervised visit. I mean, parents have a right. Do you think parents are going to forget about their children? Do you think
they're banking on it?
Do you think children are going to forget about their parents? Why can't you have supervised visits? You make all this money.
Tina, because they're hiding something.
Yes, they are hiding something, and it's evil, and it's corrupt, and it's gone on long enough. And yes, I mean, if we can do, if Deborah, if this goes viral and every Canadian gets on board, okay, I'd be so
not if when. Not if when.
Okay,
in fact,
there
I have half a mind to just like throw a bunch of money behind some marketing on this and just make this thing blow up, because it's like I'm pissed off. You know, I love children. Who doesn't love a child? You know, think about it. You could be having the worst day and you hear a child laugh, or you hear a little voice ask a question out of curiosity, and you just like, it just makes your day.
Yeah.
Or you drive by a school and the kids are laughing and playing and kicking the ball.
Yeah, just you want to figure out a dome to get all that energy, and it could, like, you know.
I know. It's like I want to hang out. So, what parting words do you want to leave?
I was just going to add to what you said there about, I've found over the years, when there's a death in the family, it's children that keep you going, because even though you've got, like, I'm remembering when my brother died. He died pretty young, 39 years old. And I remember all of the family together, and the kids, you know, they don't understand death the way adults do, because they don't understand the end of it, right? And it was the kids and their innocence and their joy living in the moment that helped us get through it, for sure.
I remember my dad died when I was 7, and I was the youngest of 3 girls, and it's what kept my mom going.
It was you girls? Yeah. That helped her grief and her healing. Yeah.
Purpose, reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, reason to save our family farm from bankruptcy. I mean, yeah, it's huge. So here's a question from Sharon. There's a lot of people questioning how CFS makes money off of the children. I think we need to know how to answer that question appropriately when they ask. Can you tell us? Do you know? Is there? Well, I'm gonna ask first. I want you to answer that question, and then I want to know, like, are there financials you can get a hold of?
Well, they're not very transparent about the financials, much like everything else that they do. It's very convoluted. But in Fancy Prison, in one of the chapters here, I talk about she was a former advocate of children and youth in British Columbia. And it's in here somewhere, but I can't quite remember. Anyway,
hold your book up for people to see. Oh.
And in the report,
you guys got to get this book, you guys.
Yeah, in the report she made was how $66 million just like went poof. Like, she could not find it, even though she was the advocate for BC, tasked with advocating for children and youth across all the province, not just the ones who have been taken, but all children. And so that's with, like, resources for daycares and special ed for maybe children with autism, all that kind of stuff. $66 million. She could not find where this money went to. Okay. So there's definitely a lack of accountability. But going back to this question now that Sharon is asking. So, for example, let's look at foster care, because not all foster care people are bad people.
Right. I have clients that are foster parents, and they're phenomenal.
So to address maybe this gap in funding, is that, again, they're very convoluted, but there is a lot of funding that's attached to a child, it's particularly a newborn baby, because they have that baby from 0 to 18 years old. That's a lot of funding for 18 years. And they'll get X number of dollars for that child, but yet they'll turn around and maybe pay foster parents $800-900 per child. That's why you hear some of the horror stories about foster parenting. It's not that they're bad people. It's that, not necessarily, but in order for them to make it viable, they have to take in 2, 3, 4, 5 kids, because it's not really a lot of money. So where's the gap going? Where's that gap between that funding that they're getting per child and then that, 900 or whatever that they're paying the foster parents? Yeah.
That's a burning question. Something else, well, let me say this first, is that the irony here is that as a taxpayer, it's your money.
I know, the joke's on us.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's your money that's going to this corrupt system. So you're paying twice when you have to pay to fight to get your child back to a system you're paying to support.
That's ding, ding, ding. You hit the nail right on the head with what happened to my money like 5 years ago. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. And then boom, it was gone. So not only did I pay taxes, I had to pay to help my daughter get her baby back, my grandbaby. And it was all my money. And they never paid any restitution. I don't want an apology. It doesn't mean anything to me at all. It's just, and
I know.
We need to educate each and every person. I have a school friend who, after I wrote my book, she's a school friend I've known since grade 1. She's like, Tina, I want a signed copy. So I did, she's a grandma too. And she posted, every single person in Canada needs to read this book. Because she, when she reviewed it and gave me feedback on it, she goes, every single person in Canada needs to read this book, because we need to know what's happening to our money. We need to know what's happening to each and every child that is going into the system, each and every child who is being abused and dying in the system. It is our right to know this, okay? So there's got to be a lot more transparency and a lot more accountability. These children are our future, and they are dying in foster care.
I just came up with some ideas. We'll talk offline about how I want to help you take this as big as possible. So we'll talk. And I feel that, if anybody's going to do anything great with their life, it's help little kids. I mean, who gives two shakes about the status and the money? Imagine it's your last day on the planet. You're about to kick the bucket, and you look back at your life and you think of all the little tiny faces that you saved.
Yeah. It's going on my tombstone, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Lynn is right. We need a forensic audit. I mean, I think that needs to be part of your strategy. Do you have a strategy to build this thing?
Right now is building awareness. It has been for the last little while. I mean, I'm getting pulled in lots of different directions. I don't mind saying.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it's.
Well, if you need a board member that can bring some strategy design to the table, give me a holler. I'd be happy to.
Sounds good.
Yeah. I don't know where to stop. I mean, I really don't. I mean, it's like,
are they
there isn't a bigger topic than this, No, we could just.
No, there isn't. Are they going to kick us off your live stream here?
This is my show, baby doll.
Oh, okay.
As long as we want. But we should say goodbye, because at this point I'm going to have to have my team split it into 2 shows. I've been told many times by them, 40 minutes, Deborah, 40 minutes. The algorithm doesn't recognize anything over 40 minutes, and I'm like, well, today we're 64 minutes, so I guess we're going to have 2 shows out of this, but that's okay. Will you come back and do another episode down the road a bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, at some point I would like to, we're continuing to raise awareness. We're continuing to help one family at a time. at some point, I'd like to hear more success stories that we're making a difference, so that our efforts, we can tangibly see the little babies who are getting returned to their families and are making a difference. Yeah, one
Yeah.
example there, Carolyn posted Serenity Law, who she was her Carrie White Bear's her grandmother, and she died in kinship care. Yeah, 4 years ago, I think. Yeah,
What is kinship care?
kinship care. So that's what they were looking at for me, for
Member of the
example.
family.
Yeah, exactly. So kinship care, and again, I mean, it's so convoluted. They were like, after they had taken, I call her Bianca in the book, but that's not her real name, my granddaughter. After they had taken Bianca, they made us jump through hoops in order for me to get my baby girls out of BC and back here to Alberta. And then they sent me forms for kinship care, for funding for kinship
Oh my
care. Well,
God.
I did not like at all. Talk about
How
bullshit.
insulting.
No, it was ridiculous because first of all, the money wasn't that great, but embedded in that documentation was permission for them to look for anything for relevant information.
Oh yeah.
Who's deciding what's relevant? It sure as heck isn't me, because you're not listening to a word I'm saying. So I didn't sign it. They tried everything. And that was another thing too, is the amount of coercion and pressure they put on parents to here, just sign here, and we'll take care of you. We'll make everything. No, don't sign until you get a lawyer who understands.
Blatant liars.
Oh, it was ridiculous. So no, I told him I'm not signing anything. I don't trust this. What do you think? I'm going to sign this so you have a carte blanche to go into my background and take something that I did in my 20s, which isn't relevant at all. But you're saying, oh, we're looking for relevant information.
Dirt.
Yeah, it might
They're
have
looking
even
for dirt.
yeah, it might have even been something I'd forgotten about, but they want permission to go into my life, talk to people, take one thing out of context, blow it out of proportion, and make me out to be like, Killer Grammy or something like that. It was ridiculous. Yeah. So yeah, Carolyn's posting here about what happened with Serenity, about her autopsy and how long it took for them to. There was another thing that came up at this conference we had a couple of weeks ago, 2019. And it was really like the lady who shared it with the group. She kept saying, I want to warn, parents whose kids have died in the system. I want to warn you before I say that. And I was sitting right beside Delana's grandmother, who was the little baby. She's the little baby on the cover of my book. And I was sitting beside her and she's like, no, I want to hear it. I want to hear it. And this woman said that there was a nation in southern Alberta, I think, and they wrote to the premier or the minister in charge of health, I think. And it was that organs were being harvested.
Yes.
I don't need to finish this because you know about this.
I know about the organ harvesting in Alberta, especially in northern Alberta. It's a big deal around the Edmonton area. It's been going on for years. Yeah. I know. I'm telling you, this is evil. These people are soulless. When you do this kind of thing to humanity, you don't come back from it.
I mean, do you not believe in God? Do you not think that you're going to have to answer to your behavior in this lifetime?
I don't think they do.
Because you're going to answer for this. This is madness.
Well, that's why I said to you, God's calling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's time. I feel like, I've been doing this work for a long time as a coach and mindset expert and repatterning people's belief systems and helping them let go of past programming and conditioning that has damaged them and kept them down, where they couldn't step into, the gifts that God planted in their heart when they came into this body, into their time. And it's been interesting to watch the receptivity of the masses for the type of work I do, because I'm really not saying anything different now than I said 20 years ago. But 20 years ago, I've been heckled, I've been laughed at, I was made fun of, like I was from some kind of other planet, espousing this Pollyanna woo-woo stuff. I literally was called that to my face so many times. And I didn't care. It's like, clearly you're missing something that I know that you don't. So if you want to make fun of me, I can promise you I will have the last laugh. And who's laughing now? Because all of those people that wouldn't have anything to do with me or my seminars are now calling me wanting help. And I have no ego on it. I will help them just as much as I'll help anybody else, because they just didn't know what they didn't know.
No, yeah.
So what's happened is, over time, we've seen a shift in humanity, and we can thank the Great Reset for the Great Awakening, because what it did is it forced people to wake up to their own power, to their own ability to have dominion over their own thoughts, their own emotions, their own experiences, their own health, their own relationships, instead of just like following along like a bunch of sheep, accepting whatever's handed to them, and living whatever life has been dictated to them by whatever the cultural thoughts, the race thoughts, the gender, whatever. It's like, you don't have to keep perpetuating your childhood as an adult. You can create a new reality for yourself at the speed of thought. If you don't like your life right now, change your thinking and it'll be different in 5 minutes. And this is, I suppose, what really fires me up about this is because these little children will never know that. These little babies will never know their true power, because it's been sucked from them from the time they're born and taken away from the possibilities of what they could experience with their families.
Yeah. Well, it was taken away from their parents, which took it away from them. And that's another issue that I have with a lot of the policies that go around this, is that they are very intentional on they elevate the children's rights, but they do so by decreasing parental rights, stripping parents of their rights. So we need to get it back to here, where we cannot talk about children's rights without talking about the family rights as a whole. So it needs to be looked at a whole thing. And it's a lot of work, and that's why they don't want to do it. It's easier for them to take the child from the family, and then they've got this whole system and mechanism and machine. What happens with the funding from there on? It needs to
follow the money. I keep saying it. Follow the money. It needs to stop. You're right. I'm sorry to cut you off. Tina, there's no money in healing a family. There's no money in that. There's a lot of money in child trafficking. And I think that we need to just stop there, because that's a good shocker to all the listeners. There's a lot of money in child trafficking. So if they can traffic your little neighbor's kid, they can traffic your kid, and that should be your wake-up call. No one's immune. And the more you bury your head in the sand, the more vulnerable that you are. So thank you for being here today. Show us your book one more time. Fancy Prison.
I'll put it right in front of my face. Yeah.
There you go. Fancy Prison by Tina Fumo from Alberta, Canada. You are absolutely a blessing to this world. And all of these people that have been on here today, thank you so much for all of your comments. We'll make sure that we get this out. Follow me on all of the major podcast platforms. I'm on every platform from Amazon Music to iTunes, Spotify, Rumble, SoundCloud, YouTube, and we go live every Tuesday at 12 noon Pacific on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So connect with me on all of my platforms. Follow me, like, share, comment. Let's get the word out. And I look forward to seeing y'all real soon. So thank you again, Tina. Really appreciate you. Yeah, definitely. Get in touch with Tina. Is there a URL?
No, just Google Fancy Prison by Tina Fumo, and it'll have links to the book. And then I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook mostly. Yeah, I don't really use Twitter that much.
And she could use an army, people. She could use an army. So step up. And then there's this organization called Canadian Voices of Change.ca. So head on over there and educate yourself at the very least, please.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everybody.
Thanks.
This has been.
Thanks for help elevate our voices.
Oh my God, my pleasure. This has been a whopper of a show today.
Yeah.
Remember, stay alert, stay aligned, and make sure that you stay awake. All right, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.